On July 2024, as Donald J. Trump was delivering a campaign speech to a crowd in Butler, Pennsylvania, an alleged gunman on the rooftop of a building 140 yards away opened fire on the former U.S. president. Trump survived, though the shooter killed one person in the audience and critically injured two others. The Biden administration and the FBI claim they are searching feverishly for a motive and have already begun to project the theory that the shooter, allegedly a 20-year-old white man named Thomas Crooks, was operating alone and not as part of a larger plot. In the African People's Socialist Party, we are clear, however, that the specific motive of the shooter is not the real question. The fundamental question is the rending of the social fabric in this country right now is the question of free speech. When Trump was shot, he was speaking. The bullets fired at Trump represent an escalation in a war against speech that exposes the deepening crisis in the United States social system, a crisis that has reached a point where the violent suppression of speech that has always been a reality for African and colonized peoples has now penetrated into the white colonial population and even the ruling class. For African and colonized peoples in this country, the right to free speech has never existed. To be shot at, bombed for speaking has been the norm for generations of African and indigenous people who have spoken out in pursuit of our freedom. The right to speak has increasingly come under serious assault in this period of heightened repression and censorship, punctuated by the U.S. government's attack on our party and our movement on the July 29, 2022, and the subsequent bogus prosecution of myself and the Uhuru Three. We have often said that in the 1960s, when our Black Revolution had defeated colonialism ideologically and politically, the U.S. government abandoned the arm of criticism and replaced it with criticism by arms. Now criticism by arms has become deployed, is becoming deployed. Now criticism by arms is being deployed within the white ruling class between contending sectors who are vying for control of the colonial state. The notion that someone can be shot for speaking is something that African people have always found repugnant. From the time we were brought to this country in chains, African people have faced severe restrictions on our right to speak or otherwise express ourselves. We remember Emmett Till. Under colonialism, freedom for African people has always been illegal. When the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution was ratified by Congress in 1791, African people in the United States were still enslaved on plantations. The First Amendment, therefore, was not for us, but for white people. The First Amendment was created by and for white people who had left Europe to escape the tyranny of kings, who came to the United States, stole the land from the indigenous people and captured and enslaved African people. And running from tyranny, the colonial settlers imposed a new form of tyranny over Black and indigenous people here. The Constitution was not for us. The law which has governed our relationship to this country was clarified by the Dred Scott decision of the Supreme Court in 1857, in which the Chief Justice, Roger Taney, ruled that Black man had no rights the white man was bound to respect. This truth about our relationship to the colonial legal system transcended whether it was a liberal or a conservative Supreme Court. It was the opinion of the Supreme Court, period. What changed this ruling was not another ruling, but the Civil War that ended the formal, that resulted in the formal end of enslavement of African people in 1865. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were ratified in that period. However, these amendments also did not confer rights upon us. Otherwise, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 would not have been necessary, and I wouldn't have had to do the work that I did during that period that brought those Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act into fruition. This is why legal scholars have defined our relationship to the United States government as de jure freedom. That is freedom in law, but de facto unfreedom, not freedom in fact. African people have always struggled for free speech. When the government attacks the Uhuru movement for exercising free speech rights, they attack free speech rights, period. It is not my free speech. It is not Black people's free speech. We had none to begin with. Ultimately, we are being used as surrogates to attack everyone's right to freedom of speech. The US ruling class stages their assault on free speech by choosing what they assume to be an unpopular target, Black people. They assume whites will go along with their assault on free speech by using Black people as the target. In the real world, they are trying to get white people to act against their own interests by winning their participation in an assault on the rights of free speech, which were created for white people in the first place. You can't take free speech from Black people who never had it. Garvey didn't have it. Nat Turner didn't have it. If we never had it, you can't take it away. But you can use the attack on me to make an attack on the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment that is supposed to be for everyone. The July 29, 2022 attack on me, the African People's Socialist Party, and the Uhuru movement was an attack on our right to win free speech rights for African people. The subsequent indictments of me, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville, the Uhuru Three, were indictments and threatened 15-year prison sentences because of our fight for free speech rights. We, Black people, have been the torchbearers of democracy in this country. We have fought for free speech, for the right to vote and participate in the electoral process. Everything that resembles democracy in this country is a consequence of the struggle by Black people. When the African People's Socialist Party ran 2 candidates for office, the US government said those campaigns were paid for by the Russians. This notion that our participation in 2017 and 2017 and 2019 in the electoral arena was motivated by Russian direction is absurd. Nothing could be more ridiculous. How could Russians teach us anything about our struggle for democratic rights in this country? Have Russians faced water hoses and bombings of their churches for trying to vote? Nobody in the US has paid a greater price for the right to vote than Black people. We fought and died for it. King was assassinated and others lost their lives in the process of just winning the right to vote. The free speech assault against the Uhuru movement will not end with the attack on the Uhuru movement. It does not require that you like Trump to recognize this. When you attack our free speech rights, you attack everybody's free speech rights. When they kill King for speaking, kill Malcolm X for speaking, when the United States government indicts and threatens imprisonment of Omali Yeshitela for speaking, they incite anyone else to attack others for saying something they don't like. They will call them lone wolves, but they are following the examples of the United States government who have initiated this violent assault on the right to speak with their bogus prosecution of the Uhuru Three. Everyone must fight for freedom of speech and association. Years ago, the United States government attacked our Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida in 1996 with over 300 police forces, including FBI and other federal agents, because they said they were concerned about what we were going to say about the case of Tyrone Lewis, an 18-year-old African who had been murdered by the police. The St. Petersburg police attacked our building and claimed that we were holding an unlawful assembly. It was an attack on free speech, but not a single civil libertarian defended us at that time. The attack on the Uhuru movement's right to free speech was then and is today an attack on constitutional rights, attacks on rights that are supposed to apply to everybody. These attacks on constitutional rights will always start with attacks on Black people and the indigenous people. It's your rights they are treading when they come for us. It's more than simply saying that if they come for us, then they can come for you. The truth is that when they come for us, they are coming for you. In 1893, Frederick Douglass wrote, quote, "Men talk of the Negro problem. There is no Negro problem. The problem is whether the American people have honesty enough, loyalty enough, honor enough, patriotism enough to live up to their own Constitution, unquote. So this statement by Frederick Douglass is the fundamental question of our times. What about free speech, America? Will government imprisonment and assassination continue to be acceptable templates for resolution of political differences? As for the Uhuru movement, we are initiating a summer project here in St. Petersburg, Florida, Freedom Summer, where we are calling on every freedom-loving person in the United States to come to St. Petersburg, Florida, and participate in a SNCC style, a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee style anti-colonial freedom movement that will conclude with the end of the victory for free speech in the trial of the Uhuru 3 on September 3rd. So drop the charges on the Uhuru 3. Hands off the Uhuru movement. Uhuru.